topic of the discussion today is academia as a cornerstone for the future energy system. We have with us a panel of both industry as well as academia professors. We'll have a robust discussion, but before we do that, let me just lay down the context of why is it that we're even discussing this topic at the moment. Our energy systems are going through a very rapid transition. What we have seen over the last 10 years has been the pace of transition has moved significantly. We were talking about, and if you look at last 10 years, we were essentially talking about how can we reduce solar cost, how can we reduce wind cost, how can we bring in efficiency in refineries, how can we bring in efficiencies in exploration. All of these were what we were discussing. We're still discussing some of them, but a lot of movement has happened, especially on the energy efficiency side, especially on reducing the cost of solar and wind for the country, significant movements. But we are at a transition phase at the moment in which the future is really uncertain in the sense where it will all go. New technologies that are emerging are very clearly hydrogen. We keep on talking about green hydrogen. We keep on talking about carbon capture. We talk about city biogas. We talk about CGD expansion, multiple things that are interlinked. What we call, at least in the consulting space, there are four major trends that are emerging. First is that the future is electrifying, which essentially means that a lot of oil will get replaced by electricity. Value chains will get integrated, which means there are not going to be specific oil value chain and a power value chain. Both will act together, and that's where the green hydrogen setup comes in together. There is going to be a very clear demand from the customer for sustainability, which means how do we go green at the customer level. All of these elements are really cutting edge, wherein a lot of industry work is happening, a lot of academic work is happening, but a lot of collaboration between the two is missing. And that's the heart of the topic today. How do we bring the academia and the industry together? Are there any mechanisms by which we can do this better? And what is happening, first of all, and can we do it better? That's the essential topic. We have half an hour. Maybe I can start off with, sir, with you. You represent the industry here. Why don't you talk about some initiatives that the company has been doing, and how do you view the industry? How do you view the academia? Please, over to you.
Yeah. Good morning, all of you. I think we are at the midst of the energy transition, and India has a very larger role to play. We being the second largest, and we will be the maintaining this situation for coming decades, and this is what they stand in terms of the Indian energy requirement, and when we have to correlate it with the academia collaboration and research support for the industry. Couple of points which immediately strikes to my mind is how can we do a better collaboration. Let me start with the note that Government of India, the various departments like the MOPNG, MNRE, the sub-functions like PPAC, Planning Department, Niti Aayog, they are really coming as an sort of proactive approach, with a proactive approach to support us. However, as an industry, I can see a lot of work is also happening at various IITs and NITs. And there are specific science and technology center driven by Government of India. They are also trying to support in their own ways. Where is the basically gap in terms of industry's expectation? I think if the private institutional industry, if they can be involved in the R&D process at the university level. And the other aspect, when the Government of India through their public sector entities, when they are doing their own R&D, how can a collaborative and task oriented approach will be there for a result oriented outcome? Say for example, if since I am representing biogas industry, when we have to really meet a target of 5,000 number of CBG plants in couple of years. So all the 8-9 IITs, those are working on this R&D activities. If they can be have an industry collaboration, if the private technology partners can join them, that will be a better outcome. Till today, in spite of the investors' readiness, in spite of certain policies and framework is in place, the industry is not in position to take a final call in terms of large investment in these sectors because the technology is missing, and when the technology is missing, there is a larger role of academia, there is a larger role of research people to join this race. So I'll take a pause here, maybe we'll come back again.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Manas, I think this topic is close to your heart, and I know that very personally. Just an open question for you here. What is it that OIL has been doing? If you can talk about it, how is it that you view the industry? How is it that you view the academia? And maybe are there any potential models that are really successful in India, wherein how you are working together? Would be good if you can talk about it.
I'll just say a few lines before I touch upon this.
Sir, you need to take volume.
I would like to say, first of all, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to be here. This is one topic, it is very close to my heart, and I'm pursuing this actually passionately for quite some time. And that genuinely thrilled me to be part of this discussion session. And you can say that I am an industry person by profession, but I am an academician by heart. So nevertheless, this actually, I strongly believe that academia lays the paper block for successful and sustaining industry, and more so for the energy industry when it is so dynamic in nature. When you talk about the energy ecosystem, it's the major component is constituted by the human resources stakeholders, which is actually both hard and soft, is part of us. And we cannot think about any energy system without this component. So, coming back to Oil India's perspective, Oil India is, we are actually, can say that blessed to be a Northeast company. We started our journey in Northeast, and we are actually custodian of one of the prolific basins of India in onshore. And you would love to know that there are majority, even more than 60% of the resources are yet to be discovered. So there are lots of jobs, huge job there. And when you talk about these things, another concern that has been very often I face from the students attending energy forums and others, say that how they will look at this profession as a system. So towards these things, I have actually initiated a process of collaborating with all the Northeast academy universities of Northeast India, and we started working on their strengths. The geoscience where they are actually skilled, we take advantage of that. Otherwise, we take help of them to orient them with a kind of parent or university to handhold them so that they grow there. Yeah. In fact, the Assam-Arakan Fold Belt, which is actually holding 2,000 million metric ton of prognosticated resource, I'm looking at that through the academia. Sure. So I feel that the basic work, if it is done by academia on their respective things, they anyway do a studying, for that gives us the foundation. Because by the time I go for OLP bidding, I should be having some basic data available with me. And data, I believe, is never sufficient. Yes. You're always working on that. Yes. So towards that, we are working on this. As I speak, there are lots of industry academia collaborations. We are having collaborations with IITs. We are having collaborations with outside agencies. And I'm also in the offing of having a collaboration with University of Calgary under Professor Dr. Sharma. And then we are in the initial stage. Look forward to have more associations. Sure. It's very interesting journey.
So just a follow-on question to that. And I want to go a little bit deeper. Are there any specific challenges that you are facing? Because then maybe the academia folks can address it.
Yeah, actually, it is very I can say unfortunate, because the industry's need and academia structures are not totally actually echoing. What happened is we get the product, we orient them with our own profession, and then they become independent. So my dream and as well as requirement of the country is to get the product straight away from the academia. Yeah. So towards that, we want to orient them what is this industry is all about, because they are basically framed by the kind of syllabus. And then that actually, it is so oriented that practical thing is not happening till yesterday, but with the new education system, it is coming up. So I'm very hopeful that it will bring in the breezing.
Sure, sure.
That's the main constraint that we do
Thank
not
you.
have.
Thank you. Now maybe if I move on to Professor Shireesh. So I think what we have been seeing and what is coming from the industry seems to be that the alignment seems to be not there yet. What I could sense, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is the orientation is not towards the market. Sometimes there's a lot of things needed once a product is received from an academia to make it market ready. So how is it that IIT Bombay is working towards it? Any ideas that you have? And then I'll come for the global perspective.
So, thank you for the opportunity. So, cutting the story short, I would say that we have a center of excellence in oil, gas, and energy. And I think Manasji is quite aware of it. This is a center that interacts with all 7 PSUs of oil and gas sector. And at IIT Bombay, we have kind of established a channel for interaction with industry. And we feel that yes, industry's expectations and academia's expectations are different. Their timetables are different, timelines are different, approaches are different, and the best way is to have meetings, interactions, decide upon the deliverables, match the language, and that we have been able to. I should say that we are quite successful, and I think Manas can approve that. But yeah, we have many projects, but the way we do it, focus IIT research into delivery and make PSU also aware of the potential of research and what is the need of it. And interaction is the only thing. Visits, various ways. We have PhDs, we have mission mode projects, we have small seed projects, various mechanisms. But we are also now working with PPSC. Pankaj is here. So policy support through academia is also needed. And I will take just 2 minutes, I will brief that. I feel that market forces were governing till now, but in transition, the policy will cover because there is that urgency and widespread application. So many things will be driven not by market but by policy. The policy will have to be supported by academia, and maybe the market, the industry will have to align with it. So that's the difference altogether in the transition because of the urgency and widespread nature. Awareness is important, training is important. So I feel that modeling of the transition, I feel that the academia has very crucial role and its ability to interact with all these stakeholders, it has to change itself.
Yes.
We are changing with NITs, other IITs, and many others. They are also in the mood. And there is an example. Just one thing, for example, we have an IP agreement upfront from all 7 PSUs, which is unique. We have NDA upfront with all 7 PSUs, which is unique. This is, in fact, we are setting the training even in IIT Bombay, the center of excellence. So IIT Bombay is doing something, and I think it will take us ahead.
Please.
Actually, this triggers a simple comparison. When I have interacted with universities and academies overseas, and when I am doing that with our Indian context, Bombay IIT is taking a collaborative project with industry, and they are going out with the same model. But University of Calgary, University of Houston, and other things, when I have interacted, I have seen that those projects are how they come close to the industry, because they have industry-sponsored projects.
Yeah.
And the industry-sponsored projects, actually, industry comes to them with a problem, and they solve the problem.
Yes.
Because it's not that our academia is not having the solution, but it is also our responsibility to reach out to the organization.
Set the expectations right.
So that
clearly
is what
calling
is
out.
not breezing in India,
Yes.
and which is actually Dr. Sharma will definitely speak more about this.
No, I was coming to that only. Maybe starting with Dr. Amit. So we've discussed about how academia works with industry in India, and you heard both sides. What is happening, like in the University of Alberta, if you can talk about, which is a little bit better, or which is a different way of looking at it? If you can bring that perspective, that would be very helpful for us.
Good. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. It's a
Maybe you
privilege
can,
to be here.
I think the mic needs to come up here.
Okay. It's better. I would say, a lot of points have been covered. Few things that I would like to highlight is, we are going through energy transition, but the fundamentals still remains the same. Still, I would say, When we talk about hydrogen, you talk about CCUS, you talk about EVs, the fundamentals are still the same. So we have an approach where we take, I mean, universities have a role where they look across the bend, 10 years, 15 years ahead of this. So some of these aspects we have been working on for years. And these actually starts with when industry comes to us with a challenge. It was mentioned at University of Alberta and a lot of programs in Canada where a consortium of industry comes with a challenge, and then there are incentives from the federal government and the provincial government to set up these large consortium which attacks those problems. So there are these kinds of consortium on energy transition. I lead one of them on energy systems assessment, but there are several of these where then there is a continuous participation from the industry into basically tailoring and guiding and seeing what is evolving, what is the final result. That's one way that we do quite a lot. The other key aspect I would say is that energy transition, I mean, we look at here, but it's not only one discipline, it's pretty interdisciplinary. And we have, in fact, a large initiative. We have centers, which is Future Energy System, $75 million initiative, where we have more than 150 professors involved in it. These are from across the faculty, not only engineering, not only sciences, social sciences, business, but looking at energy transition from all the different perspectives. And that gives a holistic view of what we are trying to do. The other key aspect I would say is that energy transition does not have a boundary. It is a global phenomena and it is going to happen globally. So there is opportunities for setting up the global centers which attacks these problems. And there is an example where we do have global centers on certain topics. So this is also an opportunity for thinking about setting up these global centers where we are trying to work on looking at what energy transition, what aspects of, but global centers. And then a part of that is the global collaboration with different IITs. We work with all the 5-6 IITs in terms of collaborating in different aspects. And that's kind of the way which will help us move forward together. Thank you.
Sure. Maybe a similar question to Dr. Sharma as well from Calgary. So anything else that you're seeing in the industry which is a little bit different? I'm sorry? Sir, I was saying a similar question to you as well. Is there anything specific that you're seeing at your academic place wherein a little bit different way of looking at the collaboration?
Okay, this is very interesting and this is happened. We were waiting at the airport for my flying to go. Guy ahead of me asked me what we're doing. I said, he almost had a signal for me, almost like a condolence message. But I feel so bad. Yes, the petroleum engineering education now in a status, a very free status. So I told him it is not like that. I'm very optimistic. Things are happening and things will not change. Yes, energy transition should be the main focus at this stage, and that will affect our education as well as going business. So if there is a real energy transition, other than changing name petroleum to energy or symbolically change anything to green, like for example in the chair, there is cover in green, that doesn't help. What actually is needed is find a pathway to energy transition. There are two major pathways. Any energy transition pathways now, at least in this transition stage, has to do oil and gas industry and education. So number one is oil and gas industry has been there for 165 years. Many of our engineering programs, way things, policies are centered around internal combustion engine, oil and gas. So things will change, and it cannot change overnight. In terms of energy transition, there are a lot of hype, which may not be real. So oil and gas will have a role to play in energy transition. That is critical because we need to adapt and change quickly, and education has to be there too. So there are multiple challenges and opportunities we have got because of artificial intelligence, big data mining, and all sorts of things. But at the end of the day, you have to put your hand where you have to take the next level. So these people have to do it. And when you talk about energy transition, our education should also focus on materials. If you are thinking of energy transition, that is what we do. It is in a nascent state. We are actually, when we talk of energy transition, we get the electric pass. But when it widespread, think about the consequences. Think of where we be prepared. The batteries are heavy. Our roads, bridges, may not This battery has to be used in the minerals started by specific mining operations, that is energy intensive operation. Then after that, once you do that, you have to dispose it. So all those issues are there. Okay, let's do it. We replace petroleum with electrical energy. But what about the product? Petroleum product. All of us in this room, not a single exception, has got something in their person that is petroleum product. So when you move to solar, wind, there is a challenge. And before I come back next day, those who think, so that's why our educational program should be a little bit more creative. At University of Calgary, those who know, we work in every continent. As I speak, my colleagues and I have coming up. We're in every continent, working with the research organizations, with the industry and the universities. In the University of Kearney, for example, we developed that computer working group that came up on new technology. Almost this came up. So things are, we work very close collaboration. That's why our focus now is to adapt ourselves to the new challenges of artificial intelligence. Students now submit assignment that you as soon as you give it that it's ready. So we have to be creative. Learning is the main objective, not how many marks you get. So we are focusing and trying to change our curriculum. As for myself, I never give those of the exam. They can change their answer anytime they like. I want to see the creativity. Every course we teach now has a design element because creativity. So energy transition provides opportunities for us. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm involved in the level of the computer program at PP Malaysia. And other than North America, these things are people are picking up. So hopefully things will be a good partner and energy transition.
Yeah. Thank you. And I think you raised a very valid point. The entire thing is not only about the hard elements, it's also about the softer side of things, wherein are even the students coming in from an academia, coming into industry, are they trained enough? Are they trained in the right courses, which is leading up to the entire them being successful, right? Because that's the entire vicious cycle. So maybe if I can ask the industry, and I'll come back to you, sir. Yeah. So maybe if I can ask the industry, so are you facing any? Is there anything that you're looking at? Maybe starting with Atulji.
Yeah.
Are there any specific thing that you're seeing in the new recruitments that you're doing? Any specific skill set that you need, which is maybe not available, or which is available? Maybe both ways.
Yeah, I think it's very important at this stage. So traditionally, we are driven by a couple of sort of engineering, science, arts, commerce, those things, and now we are talking about STEM. So, country like us, when we have to see this transition, and we have a global role to play, I think industry and academia, along with the policymaker, has to also start thinking: is there a need to add another S in this, S for sustainability? Because large part of transition, large part of climate change, large part of energy transition is going to happen in the globe, and we have a very huge role to play. So it's a need of industry, I can say, because the traditional courses are not really able to produce industry oriented or industry ready candidates. And when we say basically we need a talent, it's not only a couple of people at top level or a couple of management guys from the top colleges. We need basically people right from the ground level, like the technicians, the operator. When we are growing such a huge space in solar, we need a solar technician. When tomorrow we'll be operating a hydrogen plants, we'll be producing ammonia, gray or green. That processes plant will be operating at extremely high pressure. You need in competent people which can manage them very effectively.
Yeah.
So even the Honorable Prime Minister was talking day before yesterday, we will be growing double digit in the automobile sector. So these are necessarily the EVs and the EV related technologies. So we have to have a mechanism in place in terms of a people, a human capital who can operate it, who can produce it, who can market it, and they can also take care about the upkeeping of this all asset in the coming days. So I think this is the right time, and you sir talked about the new education policy. There is a provision in that policy. However, it should not again sort of theoretical activity, I can say. It has to be again a very industry oriented and pragmatic approach. We have to build that flexibility in the system that we need in this industry specific caliber in terms of the next generation students. I think if you have this type of approach, it is going to add a lot of value to the our next generation, because we are also part of the process where industry is also responsible for the human capital of the country.
Yeah, yeah. So any views from OIL on this? Because
actually,
I know it's a very different view because private sector might look at it differently.
Yeah, Anand, my question, actually, this is a thing I just try to look at from the perspective of the students and
So
their
a little bit,
expectations.
I think it's, yeah.
I'd like to look at it from the perspective of the students and their expectation out of it. We look at it, actually, there are certain things that we need to train, and then we are actually also supposed to train them. So problem is not in there. Problem is we have to have an education system where we do not kill the creativity of the students. We do not kill the capacity to think differently. You know, the education system we are following earlier was actually need to look into, which is judiciously being looked into at this stage. You know, there are many things that we need to unlearn to learn the new things. So those things needs to be brought in. You know, see, in the energy domain, if I talk about only petroleum industry, you know, in near future, a person joining the industry will be having a fear of losing his job. And there will be a thing that so much of human cry has been created. You know, I say created,
Yes.
so that that people are afraid of taking any profession in E&P industry. So these questions I very often encounter from the students. So I tell them, ki, this is not about, like, you know, the simple formula is energy cannot be destroyed. So if you look at that, you know, it's in a very kind of critical way of doing it something, you know, it is always changes forms. Similarly, that the NP industry will be there with so much of domain and no new industry will come in. It's a transition happening all throughout the ages.
Yeah.
So, and then question is, if we have some person which is having the creativity intact, he will imbibe into the system as the requirement is. Let the person decide what he wants. Let his hobby and passion, profession and hobby, if it becomes two, the person never works.
Yeah.
So I want something to happen to them so that they really enjoy the job, and then they never works actually.
Yeah. So
So
very,
that-
very interesting idea, sir. So maybe I'll move on in the interest of time to Professor Shireesh. Sir, the entire role of academia, and I have also been a part of many of these discussions in which maybe IIT Bombay and Mumbai is doing it, but a lot of the other institutes in the country are simply not ready to have those professionals which can be just industry ready. So you have a lot of these students coming out, maybe they are not taught well, maybe the motivation levels are a challenge, but they are just not ready, and that's where they struggle sometimes. The transition is very tough for some of them. How do you think some ideas on that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think it's true up to a certain extent, and the exposure to reality is a key. Of course, that may need to hands-on for a mechanical or maybe technicians, but otherwise, everywhere, exposure to reality in various ways, industry, society is very crucial, and that motivates them, that puts their ideas in place in a relevant perspective, and that's very important. It's difficult, and the root cause is faculty.
Yes.
Exposure of faculty to all these things is becoming a bottleneck at coaching. Students are ready, but are they faculty ready for that? That's another question. But I add one more thing, that most of the NITs have a good rapport with the industry, because they are not as good as IIT to get straight away project from government many times, or industry not always, but they have local industry connection. So they are also very crucial, and NITs can also play a very important role. Other than IITs, that's one thing. And I would say a mechanism for this, and I think academia should come up with a kind of a mechanism for think tank, so that there is no forum clearly functioning interesting forum for academicians where industry and policy can also give input for academic transition. NEP, National Energy Policy, is trying to do that, but something like that, especially for energy transition, is needed. That's what I say.
Got it. No, I think that's an interesting idea. Maybe in the interest of time, Dr. Amit, very quickly, are there any thoughts that you have on the vocational skill sets? We understand we have a lot of engineers, but a lot of vocational technicians, for example, a lot of this is needed as we move from now the next 15, 20 years. Any ideas that you have on that would be helpful.
Yeah, okay. Just one thought on what
Yes,
the
yes,
professor
please.
was saying. You know, some of our programs to make the engineers more industry ready, it's not only like, you know, we extend that program not to 5 years program, where we make sure that half a year for 2 years, 3 years, they spend in the industry. So it's like a co-op program.
Yes.
So which helps them getting more exposure to the industry and make them more industry ready. I mean, so that's one of the mechanisms that could be done. In terms of vocational training, yes, that's a critical part. My sense is that could be done in a collaboration with the industry. And the way I see it, that some of these aspects of energy transition, industry is already experienced. They have been doing it for a long time. You know, I mentioned hydrogen. We have been producing it for decades. We know how to produce hydrogen, handle hydrogen. You need technicians, new technicians, because now we are going more in looking at more utilization of that aspect. Same with carbon capture and storage. A lot of EOR we have already done. We are doing it on a larger scale. So here, the programs could be basically developed in collaboration with the industry, where you have these certification programs, and that will help in getting more these technicians
Sure.
and trades
Sure.
people in the system.
Sure. And just the last thing for you, Doctor, do you agree with this? Are there any initial thoughts on how is it that we can just make students more industry ready?
Please repeat your last part.
So anything to make the students more industry ready. Some thoughts came in from Dr. Amit. So anything else that you can add?
In our case, we try to make our graduates as focused. They have to be creative, they have to be innovative, and they also be able to hit the ground running when they graduate. So we have programs that will encourage them to take internship. We get a lot of interaction with the industry. In fact, if you go to the University of Calgary, we work so closely, and we back and forth. And we're actually helping many industries as far as Spain, Russia, South America, to set up a lot of sophisticated labs. So our graduates are working here. So I think we are working very closely, and we are very part of the ecosystem.
Okay. No, I think that's it from my side. Anything else from the audience? Otherwise, I can just summarize. Okay, I think we can just summarize. I think the model of what I could sense from the discussion is that the model of collaboration between the industry and the academia does exist. It's stronger in some segments, it is weaker in some. Obviously, there is an element wherever it is strong to replicate that across. NITs obviously play a big role, specifically in the Indian territory. There is a specific need for having energy transition professionals coming out, and how will the softer side of it be handled is something that still needs to be seen. There are some really interesting global models available. How can we replicate some of them, either through cross collaboration platforms being available between both, or to have really specific 2 years wherein a student can go in and learn that and come back. That those sort of transition, it can just make it everything a bit easier. That's at least what I have. Thank you so much.